When I moved here in 2000, there were wood-related factories all over the place. Paper mills in Newton Falls and DeFerriot, furniture plants like Ethan Allen in Boonville. There's still Finch Paper, formerly Finch Prine in Glens Falls, and Silvamo, formerly International Paper in Ticonderoga. But most of the lumber-related factory base is gone. Out in the woods, however, logging is still a critical job in the region. We meet one logger who loves what he does on today's Story of the Day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Pearsall Wealth Management at UBS Wealth Management USA, subsidiary UBS AG, member FINRA SIPC, 1 Broad Street Plaza, Glens Falls, and the New York State Caregiving and Respite Coalition, seeking volunteers aged 55 plus to support family caregivers in northern and central New York. Visit nyscrc/AmeriCorps.org.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's November 18th. First up, the list of potential candidates to run in a special election for New York's 21st congressional seat is starting to take shape. President-elect Donald Trump nominated Congresswoman Elise Stefanik to serve as the next ambassador to the United Nations, and so a special election to replace her could come as soon as next spring. Aaron Shello-Levine of the New York Public News Network reports on one Republican candidate who's considering a run to replace Stefanik.
Jeremy Messina, a 28-year-old Washington County native and former restaurant owner, lost his bid for the 113th state assembly seat against longtime Democratic incumbent Kerry Warner. Warner defeated Messina about 55 to 45%. With a special election in the offing for a district that covers 15 upstate counties, Messina says he's considering a run after he earned Stefanik's endorsement in November's race.
We have a team in place ready to hit the ground running if that's what we decide to do. And of course, it has to come down to getting Elise Stefanik's endorsement and backing in this race, having President Trump sign off on it. We need to make sure that everybody's okay with this going forward.
Messina says his vocal support for Trump and advocacy for local businesses make him an ideal candidate for the seat. In Saratoga Springs, I'm Aaron Shello-Levine for the New York Public News Network.
A scientific leader in the Adirondacks will take the helm of the Lake George Association early next year. Brendan Wiltsey has been a lead researcher at the Adirondack Watershed Institute for the last 3 years, most recently serving as its director. When he takes over the Lake George Association in January, Wiltsey says he'll focus on connecting the LGA with locals and the surrounding communities.
I do hope that background and skills in science can help, inject more science into the work of LGA, but also really bridging that gap between science and solutions. So translating what we understand about the lake into solutions that are going to protect it.
The Lake George Association runs a number of programs to keep the lake clean, including the annual beach cleanups and grants for septic tank repairs. Logging used to be big business in the North Country. In Boonville, it still is. But a changing economy and a changing climate are posing new challenges. In today's North Country at Work story, one forester tells us about the changes he's seen over 26 years in the woods. Anna Williams-Birkin has our story.
Bailey Lumber is a hardwood supplier and manufacturer with locations all over the eastern U.S. Boonville is home to one of their lumber yards. It's also where Paul Snyder got started in forestry as an intern over 25 years ago.
Looking for a tree that grows straight, sound, has a good crown, the top, the leaves look good, that looks like a healthy tree, and a lot of it's just an experience. Started out with some other loggers, foresters, looking at trees and knowing they would tell me what to look for, and then you learn from that.
Bailey offered Snyder a full-time job right out of college cruising timber, and he took it.
So I would go to the woods and evaluate what the trees look like for their value and their quality, figure out how much was there for the volumes, try to figure out how to get the wood out of the woods.
Today, Snyder is a procurement forester. He works with the state and private landowners from the Champlain Valley all the way over to the Tug Hill Plateau, buying and moving out wood for Bailey's lumber yard. They cut trees according to a forester's prescription, which takes into account the tree's spacing, health, and maturity.
Yeah, when I started this job, I had to scratch and dig to try to find anything. I was a young guy. My hair was not gray then, and it was hard starting out. But after doing it for quite a while, a lot more of the wood comes to me.
Lumber has been big in Boonville since back in the days when logging was done with a crosscut saw and a team of horses. Snyder grew up in Western New York and still remembers when he learned just how big of a deal forestry is here.
Just pulling into town and seeing a place that sells skidders, and actually there used to be 2 places that sold skidders in town, and the log trucks everywhere. There used to be more pulp mills, a couple sawmills in town. It just was logging in the Boonville and North Country area is just such a big part of what goes on. It was pretty impressive.
Snyder remembers when the area was full of small, family-run logging operations, but he says it's not like that anymore.
And that's one thing that really has changed is the cost of operations for the loggers has really gone up. Just like agriculture, it's very hard to get into it because of the equipment costs, and the upfront costs are so tremendous from what it used to be.
There's also the rising costs of insurance, labor, and fuel. Snyder says this area has lost a lot of its loggers. Some have retired, others downsized, and he thinks the younger generation just isn't as interested in the work. Climate change has also made logging tricky because it traditionally relies on winter freezes to get those logs out of the woods.
The way the winters have been the last 5 or 6 years, we've had some real difficult times getting the wood out. I can think of several jobs where we just struggled taking a chance, putting the wood up on a landing, and then hoping that the road stays frozen enough to get all that out of the woods, and then scrambling to get it out of the woods when we did have frozen weather.
Snyder says he's also noticed more and more bugs in his wood.
I was just scaling some ash logs at the mill. They're all infested with the emerald ash borer. There's something that is affecting, it seems, every tree, but the ash is really the sad one, especially in this area. A lot of old abandoned farmland that grew up to ash, and now it's dying.
And there's also all that rain.
We get tremendous rainstorms now. And it doesn't come in a half an inch or a quarter inch. We get 2 to 3 inch rainstorms consistently. And that has made the loggers can't work full weeks anymore. They're working 2 or 3 days a week, maybe 4 days a week. And they're having to sit a couple days because of the precipitation.
The loggers Bailey works with are all independent contractors. They get to say yes or no to each project. It's Snyder's job to be the middleman.
I have a logger that I have a tremendous amount of respect from that has told me, no, I can't cut that job. I can't make any money on it. I have to do a balancing act of keeping the logger happy with the scale and the price, but also doing the right by the mill to make sure that we're profitable also.
That may be a challenge, but Snyder says it's also satisfying. Good, hardworking people are one of the big reasons he's stayed in the industry. That, and the reason he got into forestry in the first place. He loves being in the woods.
You do have to remember the November day that's 32 degrees and snowing and raining at the same time, but I do get to spend a lot of really nice days outside. And that is something I love about the job is I've been on tracts of land all through the Adirondacks and Tug Hill that other people don't get to see. And I have seen some beautiful places through this job.
The beauty of the woods is one thing that never changes, but Snyder hopes he'll get some better weather to enjoy it. For North Country Public Radio's North Country at Work project, I'm Anna Williams-Bergen in Boonville.
Speaking of North Country at Work, Wednesday night is a big night. We'll have an evening of live storytelling in Boonville, like the interview you just heard. The stories start at 6 o'clock at Boonville's Irwin Library. Come tell your funniest or most meaningful work story to an audience of friends, family, and neighbors, or just come listen. It's called Boonville at Work Live from NCPR. Get the details, ncpr.org/work, but definitely show up Wednesday at 6 o'clock at Boonville's Irwin Library for North Country at Work stories. It's going to be a really great time. We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Alan Dunham of South Glens Falls and Patricia Julian of Burlington. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.